GoJo and Golic, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Latzia holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. Guys, happy 2024. Happy New Year. How we feeling? We had a little bit of a hiatus. Thank you to everybody who has downloaded, subscribed, rated, and reviewed us, left us a 5-star rating, and followed us in 2023 on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and more. We hope you guys all had a good week. First lead into the new year, a great weekend. We got a great show for you guys, as always. Do all that stuff. Anish Shroff, ESPN and Carolina Panthers play-by-play guy, is going to join us here to break down everything that went on in college football and in a special bowl called the Pop Tart Bowl that might have broken the internet. But, Dad, did you and Mom stay up till midnight for the New Year, or did you do what I noticed is the trend out here on the West Coast is just celebrate East Coast New Year at 9 o'clock and then get to bed at a normal hour?
Yeah, which would be in Arizona here, that would be 10 o'clock. You have 9 o'clock, and we did not even make it to that. I don't even think we would have made it to yours at 9 o'clock if you went 9 o'clock to 12 Eastern time. No, I do not remember the last time your mother and I saw midnight really in any time zone, to be honest with you. We did not make it up. We didn't even, it's not like we tried to make it up. It's not like we were fighting sleep to try and make it up. We just flat out went to bed and realized when we wake up, the new year's going to start no matter what, no matter whether we were up partying or we were in bed. So I'm cool with that. What's interesting now to me, though, is we're in day 2 of the how many millions of people that are eating right and going to change their body, and how long it lasts for everybody, right? How long it goes until, you know what, I'm just going to have this little bit of this, or I'm going to have that little bit of that, till however long into the new year, you're back to what you were in the old year. But by God, you made that resolution. Everybody, you're in day 2. Hold strong. Hold strong for at least a few more hours.
We believe in you. We think you can get it done. We support your goals and ambitions right now. We are in day 2 of the time where you get to say Happy New Year to people as a greeting. But we're also, Dad, in an important juncture because I think you made the right choice in going to bed early on the night of New Year's Eve because you knew we had bangers lined up on New Year's Day in college football. And a lot of people on the East Coast complaining about the start time of the Sugar Bowl as we had now for the second straight year. The college football playoff had been marred by bad games in the semifinals for the first 8 years of its iteration. And then last year we got good ones, Ohio State, Georgia, TCU, Michigan, and followed it up this year with 2 more all-timers. We all said Florida State got jobbed in the way that it worked out with the selection committee. But I was really excited to watch both these games and kind of glad that we got them. And it delivered. Like the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl were 2 absolute classics. You had just the second overtime game in the history of the Rose Bowl played in this. And then you had the Sugar Bowl at night that was every bit the laser light show. So, Dad, was there one game that stood out to you more here? Was there one game that the result maybe surprised you more? Or was this exactly what you expected?
No, I mean, I did pick Alabama to win and Washington to win. So, you know, if you want to say I'm surprised there, no, because I know Michigan is a great team as well. These games both delivered exactly how we thought, right? Michigan-Alabama would be probably a shorter game, even though it went to overtime, and a more physical game, a more line of scrimmage game. and Washington, Texas would be a little more of a shootout. It got a little close to that over, closer than we thought. I thought they were going to hit the over in the third quarter. They were both exactly as I thought they were going to be as far as how they were played. Let me quickly make an aside because of the Florida State factor in this. So one thing I'll say, if Florida State was in this, their defense was good enough to play as good as those defenses did, Michigan and Alabama, especially because Michigan's got the top defense in the country, but Florida State's a great defense. Their defense would have hung with any of those defenses. It's just a matter if their offense would have been able to do anything with the backup quarterback because they had talented receivers and a running back as well. So I will say that. But these games were they were exactly outside of not determining what the plays that we're gonna decide these games, exactly what I thought we were gonna be. What I didn't, and it's the one thing we always kind of put to the side a little bit. I mean, listen, let's be honest. Special teams just about cost Michigan in this game. Just horrific. And it's one of the part of the games, while it's a third of the game, it's never thought of like a third of the game. And then all of a sudden, you're muffing punts, you're missing extra point bad snap, you're missing, field goals. And it's like, wow, this could cost you a trip to the national championship game. But it did not. They persevered.
Yeah, that was the amazing part, because if we're going to start with the Rose Bowl and look at that, going into that game, I was like you. I picked Alabama, and based on what we saw early there with some of the mistakes by Michigan, you almost had an interception by J.J. McCarthy on the second play. You had the botched extra point, and then you had the muffed punt experience in there as well for a Michigan team that, according to Bill Connolly's SP Plus over at ESPN, was like the fourth best special teams unit in college football this year. Those are uncharacteristic mistakes that looked like nerves in a big stage and in a big moment. And I saw that, and I saw mistakes early and said, this seems like a recipe for an Alabama win. And Dad, credit to Jim Harbaugh and this entire Michigan coaching staff, because they looked like the better team. For three quarters of this game, they were dominant on offense, 5 sacks in the first half against an Alabama team that did a lot more dropping back than I expected to in the pass game, and then were able to slam the door shut late between dominance along the line of scrimmage. We saw in overtime the touchdown by Blake Corum and that offensive line rolling Alabama back. But, Dad, it really came down to dominance along the lines of scrimmage, early good coaching decisions by Michigan, especially on offense. Sharon Moore called a great game, especially in the first half of that one. And then Jim Harbaugh's decision at the end of that game in the fourth quarter to go for it on fourth down in his own territory, the big play to Blake Corum, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I was somewhat surprised, and you could talk about the difference being a former old lineman, of what Bama did in the second half. I mean, Bama in the first half, just to leave your guys basically, a pro set? I mean, just all blocking one-on-one, no help at all. 5 sacks. I mean, you got to help your guys out a little more than I thought they did in that first half. They were just basically saying, block them. And Michigan's rush was just too much for the Alabama O-line. And Alabama switched it up in the second half, gave it a little bit of a different look. You could explain, again, more than I, whether they changed anything up front, but they got Milroe on the move a little more as well. Maybe that was more of the pro sets of what we see in the pros now, getting your quarterback on the move a bit to help him out. But that took a little long for me, I thought, to make that adjustment. But they did, because the difference of the first half and then the third quarter was night and day for Alabama. But give Michigan all the credit. I thought Michigan was going to punt there at the end, Mike, because they had their 3 timeouts. They have the best defense in the country, and I thought they were going to punt the ball, play that field position game, try and get the ball back, and score right at the end. But they go for it on 4th and 2, as you mentioned. You hit Blake Corum on the swing, and he's out and gets 27 yards on that play. A monster play for Michigan. They just came up with the right plays. The throwback to McCarthy that he had to one hand and whirl around and throw. I mean, just some of the plays they did after looking like they were going to be in trouble. But they were make no mistake, they were the better team. They were the better team. That being said, It's 20-10. Bama is ahead with just starting the fourth quarter. They have a 10-point lead on a Michigan team that's not known for throwing the rock around. J.J. McCarthy been a part of a couple of elimination games in the playoffs, and here he is with a chance to not only get a game-winning tying drive in the fourth, but then a game-winning drive, which is really more Blake Corum, in overtime for them to get the win.
Yep, give them all the credit in the world. They made the biggest plays in the biggest moments. I think largely outcoached Alabama in this game. And the biggest factor that I didn't account for going into this that I thought Bama had remedied was the situation you mentioned, protection. They did do a lot of different stuff in the second half. They went with a little more timely tempo. They went more max protection on a lot of the shots, more design quarterback run, all the stuff that's good antidotes for an Alabama offensive line that gave up 43 sacks during the season. They were 115th in sacks allowed this year, and Michigan fully took advantage of that in this game in a way that I thought Alabama had gotten past. Dad, the other thing that I think is going to be talked about a lot for Alabama is the last play of this game. You get to overtime. You're the last one holding the pen because you won the toss in overtime, and they get down. It's 4th and goal, very down near the goal line, and Alabama calls a designed run for Jalen Milroe, something we've been used to seeing with that team, and it gets stuffed early because, Dad, they had a ton of quarterback center issues that day. McLaughlin, their center, that had been an issue for them all year, and we saw a number of moments in this game in the second half where Alabama was driving to look to put it away, and a couple of errant snaps completely changed the flow of this. That final play, Dad, what was your thought process? Because I think while I didn't love the play, it had a chance. And if the snap had just been on time and we had an operation they could trust all day, I do think that history would look at that play a little bit differently because everyone was crushing it immediately in the postgame. And then you see a few different angles, especially that overhead angle from behind. And if the quarterback catches the ball, is able to take the hitch that you're supposed to take on that play, and then able to go down, it was quarterback power the way it was blocked up front. Had a bit of a wall backside. The right tackle getting blown up kind of hurt it. But if the play happens in the normal timing it's supposed to, he's got a shot following his puller on the left side to potentially break a tackle and get this thing in.
The play is way closer than what it looked like. It looked like, what the hell are you doing? Michigan just stuffed this play. But you're right. When this play is broken down, you see the right guard pull, and that's who Milroe can follow. You see the end man, the DB, Will Johnson for Michigan, coming up the field too far. This is man coverage, and they motion the running back out of the backfield to get a linebacker out of there to try and lighten the box a little bit. And you're right. I mean, he's got the guard pulling, and the snap throws it off. And J.C. Latham, the right tackle, gets absolutely punished by Josiah Stewart. I mean, thumbs up to Josiah Stewart. He takes a 360-pounder and just backs him into Jalen Milroe. Now, let's also wait and see, because as you and I both noticed, and I'm sure a lot of other people did, Latham grabbed his knee right after the play. Did he get driven back because he hurt his knee during the play? Did he get hurt? We'll obviously find out, because he reached down and grabbed his knee right away, so we'll see. But the play did have a chance. Now, I'm more of a fan of giving the quarterback an option, of rolling him out. You know, if he can run, great. If he has to throw, then throw. So I wasn't a huge fan of the play either. You know what probably would have worked there? One of those little run to the line and jump passes, quite honestly. That could have worked too. But I'm more of a fan of giving the quarterback an option to run or pass. So I didn't really like the play call. But to that point, for people that are just slamming it, watch it. Everybody's going to break it down today. And when you break it down, a good snap, even with the tackle getting pushed back, may get him there. Now, Will Johnson, the DB who went up too high, he may have been able to come backtrack and get Milroe. He may have gotten there. But that play had a better chance than what it looked like on TV.
It would have been by no means a walk-in, but I think the way it was blocked up had a shot had it happened in normal time, because he had the swing pass as a potential pass option. Like, you're supposed to look out that way, have that as an outlet, and then if it's not there, the timing then leads you back to that quarterback run. I'll be fascinated to see if the discourse around that changes at all when people get more looks at it. But either way, Michigan was the better team for the vast majority of the day. They get that win there, and I think the same can be said for the nightcap here, Emerson, as we had the Washington Huskies in Texas in a game that featured markedly more offense.
Yeah, dude, the Michael Penix Jr. bandwagon right now, filling up fast. So dude passed for 430 yards, 2 touchdowns against Texas, as the Huskies held off the Longhorns 37-31 in the Sugar Bowl semifinal here, guys, earning both the 6-year quarterback. Yes, 6 years with 2 surgically repaired knees, for crying out loud, and the dead man walking Pac-12 one last chance to go out a champion. GoJo, it's a hell of a story, a hell of a comeback story for Penix here, who some forget rebounded from 4 season-ending injuries here to get to this point.
It's a remarkable story. And, Dad, one of the better playoff games we've ever seen. The 4th highest passing total in a CFP game behind 2 Joe Burrows in there.
Right.
And a Mac Jones from one of the greatest offenses that we've ever seen. So, rarefied air and keyhole throws. This guy was unconscious for the vast majority of the night. We know that they've got a room full of NFL wide receivers. Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. All these guys are ballers that, quite honestly, and I saw plenty of people make the comparison, the Kansas City Chiefs would kill to have the Washington Huskies receiver room at this current juncture. But Michael Penix Jr. made some absolutely bonkers throws in this game and had himself a bit of a C.J. Stroud moment from last year where, Dad, now I think for a lot of people that even regardless of the success Washington had this year, hadn't checked out the Pac-12, got to meet this player and are all of a sudden reconsidering what they think about him as a draft prospect.
And I just want to make sure it is on record, I am not one of those. I had always said, I love this kid at this level. I love the kid at the next level. I have put him at just about the entire time the 3rd quarterback. I love what he does. I love the way he moves in the pocket. Receivers are going to love him because he's so accurate with the ball. And I don't mean just a completion. I mean, he puts the ball where the receivers can run after the catch. And receivers love that. Now, is he the scramble, run, unbelievable, threat that way? No, but he can do enough with his legs to make himself dangerous at times. I love the way this kid slides in the pocket, Mike. His eyes stay down the field, doesn't take his eyes off the coverage. He's incredibly smart. He avoids the rush just enough to get it. Sometimes it look like, oh, he's going to get caught. And he just slides enough to get out of it and make a throw. I have always liked what he has done, and I think he is going to do well at the next level. Let's see what kind of a team he ends up on. Is it a team where they don't have as good a receivers as he has with Polk and Odunze, who are both over 100 yards in this game? We'll wait and see. But this, again, was a game that was played just like we thought. Was going to be a shootout all the way where Texas makes a final drive and ends up having 1 second on the clock easily in touchdown range. And I don't mind that. I know we're not fans of the fade down there. We saw it work for them on the touchdown before into the corner of the end zone. You're basically just saying it's your guy on my guy. And this is where we're going to go with the ball, win or lose. And that seemed to be their best option.
Yeah, an incredible play by the Huskies defensive back Elijah Jackson on that one. A.D. Mitchell had yet another touchdown in a playoff game, a guy who had been a star for Georgia before and now balled out in the CFP again here, albeit a little bit too little too late. Elijah Jackson had the same version of that as a defensive back, going up on that final play and swatting the hell out of that ball down. And, Dad, that's why I think this Huskies team is fascinating, because their defense is by no means good. Like, we saw all the stats, but this game, the difference for Washington is their defense able to make timely enough plays. You've got guys like Braylon Trice, the defensive end, who showed up and flashed a lot as a pass rusher, as a guy on rushing downs there. You had some timely plays. Jabbar Muhammad on the back end's probably their best defensive back. But as much as anything, Dad, they played one of their cleanest games. I think they're like 118th in the country in terms of penalties per game, and they had 3 in this game right now. That was a Huskies team that played clean and gave their ball back to their offense just enough to make it work. And I think that's going to have to be the recipe for them against Michigan in this as well. So I do. Early on, the Huskies are a 4.5-point dog opening on DraftKings Sportsbook to Michigan in this championship game. We figured that would probably be the case, but that'll have to be the recipe for them. Before we start to turn the page too much on that, Dad, I agree with you. I think Michael Penix is going to have his day in court for the 3rd quarterback in this draft. Among him, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy's been thrown in there, a little bit too rich for my blood there. But I have always enjoyed him. Seems like the perfect Detroit Lions quarterback, quite honestly. I would love to see him in an offense like that. The other thing that's going to come up with this, Dad, late in that game, Kalen DeBoer, the decision on 3rd and 5 with about a minute left. To rush there, Dylan Johnson, their running back, gets hurt on that play and it stops the clock and changes the face of this completely. One, weird rule that an injured player ends up hurting you like that as an offense and something that might be worth looking at. But, Dad, in general, the decision to run there, I don't actually have a problem with. A lot of people comparing it to the Mario Cristobal kneel down there.
No.
If you pop 5 yards, the game is over there.
Right.
It's a lot different than mathematically it being done. They would have had about 15 seconds left if you just kneel and punt there. But I can understand that. To me, that was just a real bad luck moment.
Yeah, I agree. I don't put that in the Cristobal moment at all. But just unfortunate that you get hurt and it works against you. Like you said, you have your own player hurt and it works against you with the clock stopping. So, no, I don't have a problem with that play, but boy, oh boy, did Texas make it exciting down there at the end. Quite honestly, I thought what would work, you saw the DB in that last play playing off, right? If Mitchell pulls that right to the end zone, do the spin out right by the front pylon, I actually think they score and could win that game. But it doesn't happen. Give Washington all the credit in the world. I know Washington's a dog, but I'll say it right now. I am picking Washington to win the national championship.
They are used to that, and they are encouraging everyone to continue doubting them as Washington has now won 10 straight games by 10 points or fewer. That is the most in the modern Division I era in college football. So the Huskies right back where they want to be. Coming up next, though, the Baltimore Ravens also right where they want to be as we had some clinching going on in the NFL. So back here on GoJo and Golic, where it is time now for Surreal Celebrations presented by Ciroc. Ciroc champions your game day celebration with ultra premium vodka. Ravens celebrating the #1 overall seed after clinching the top spot in the AFC with a big win, dominating win over the Dolphins. Here's John Harbaugh celebrating with his team in the locker room afterwards.
Yeah, the Ravens now have the option, though, guys, of resting their starters for the regular season finale against Pittsburgh, give them 2 weeks of rest and recovery before the divisional round. It's very similar to that situation they were in 2019. You guys remember that? And Lamar, the MVP that season, the favorite to win it this season, they were like 14-2, had that first round off, and then got embarrassed by the Titans in the divisional round.
Yeah, and Dad, I think that's good to inform kind of the mindset of this Ravens team, because that is absolutely something that weighs on them. Lamar Jackson's messaging has always been, in the time really before and since then, I'm here to win a Super Bowl. This is about what lies beyond that. And so they're going to try and figure all that out and how to map that situation. But, Dad, this was an exclamation mark performance on what absolutely should be a Lamar Jackson MVP case for this season. And it's been fun to watch us morph back into a world where I have championed this as well. We've got better statistics now to try and inform some of the way that we talk about football, but letting those be the only thing that determines outcomes when all of us still have eyes and can watch what Lamar Jackson has done and the way he's influenced this team, drifting back to that portion of it where the ball itself matters is nice to see as really the chief thing behind Lamar's deserved MVP candidacy, because especially, and I'd say the last month or so, he has been a man possessed in the pocket and has led this Ravens team to now being the best team in football.
This should be one of those, as far as his MVP moment. You know how the baseball players, some of them have won the batting title toward the end of the season and they stop playing, so they win the batting title. I mean, Lamar's got it kind of locked up here, I think. So would you play him in this last game? I mean, they're playing Pittsburgh. What's interesting here, Pittsburgh can still make the playoffs. Yeah. So if Pitt gets a less than, star-studded or Baltimore Ravens team, they get a win here. There are more than a few options. I look at the sheet and it makes my eyes glaze over because I have it in front of me of the ways they can make the playoffs. And one of the ways is the game I'm doing. I'm doing a Buffalo at Miami, where the winner takes a division in this one, and Buffalo could actually lose this game and be out of the playoffs, possibly replaced by Pittsburgh if they win this game, depending on some other things as well. So that's always an interesting thing to me when people complain and say, Baltimore should have to play, their top guys to make it fair so Pittsburgh maybe doesn't backdoor in. And I say, BS, man. You do what's right for you. If you want to sit your entire squad, sit them. Don't care. Your goal is the Super Bowl, and you have the team to get there and win it this year. So you do what you got to do in this last game, but it definitely could open the door for Pittsburgh, depending on how Baltimore plays this game.
Yeah, I think for Baltimore, and especially as it pertains to Lamar and the MVP, you do what you think is best in terms of rest or rust or continuity, whatever you want to do down the stretch without there in mind. Because at this point, you're right. Lamar Jackson needs not add more to his MVP candidacy. Now, do I still think Christian McCaffrey should have his day in court on that? Absolutely. Do I still think Josh Allen, depending on the outcome of this, should have his day in court, considering he's now accounted for, 42 touchdowns this season between rushing and passing on a team that's been white hot down the post stretch of the season? Absolutely. But no, I don't think Lamar Jackson has anything else to play for this season. And listen, while we understand the injury thing has been, to me, overblown to a point with Lamar Jackson as a reason why you maybe didn't want to pay him if you're one of those idiot teams that raised their hands on the first day of free agency and said, we're not going to try and go after Lamar Jackson, who's on the franchise tag at that point. We obviously know it's overblown to that end, but at the same time, the last thing you want to do, in my mind, if you're Baltimore, is risk injuring any of your players, because, Dad, that has been the thing that has ultimately damned you in these last number of seasons with Lamar at the helm since that MVP season. So I think health is the priority for Baltimore team, who is healthier than we've seen them in quite some time. You give them time. Kyle Hamilton missed this last game on defense. Give him time to recover. And you roll into the playoffs looking like the Death Star. I mean, hanging 50 on a Dolphins defense that had looked really good as of late, especially getting after the Packers. That was after the pass rushers. That is eye-popping.
By the way, how they're playing, but also they've won, 6 in a row. Couple that with how the other top teams that we thought in the AFC are playing. Kansas City isn't, well, finally, they have a 1-game winning streak now after dropping some games. So are you worried? Jacksonville, I don't think anybody's worried about. Miami or Buffalo, you just saw what Baltimore did to Miami. The Cleveland Browns, quite honestly, Kevin Stefanski's the coach of the year in my eyes. To do what you've done with 4 quarterbacks is crazy. They've won 4 in a row. Joe Flacco, the elite, has been out there doing his thing. They might be the biggest threat to Baltimore the way they're playing right now. They may be. So I think the way Baltimore is playing, coupled with the way the rest of the AFC is playing, which we had said was so deep going into the season, we've seen a whole lot of warts on a whole lot of teams, and Baltimore is just on fire right now.
Yeah, what a fun styles make fight versus matchup that would potentially be in the postseason if those two teams got there. Because you're right, having a real conversation about the Browns as a team people see making it to the AFC Championship game is now on the table because Joe Flacco has come back and played F-it ball for them at quarterback. But so Dad, I'm with you on that. I think right now, if the season ended today, I'd have to give the MVP to Lamar, though. As much as the Josh Allen numbers are tantalizing, and it's one of those where the numbers match the tape. Like, Josh Allen has been incredible for them. Sans the Cowboys game where he didn't have to do anything but hand the ball off. He's been the driving force behind wins for them. But that has been Lamar at the helm of an offense, Dad, that we talked about at the beginning of the year. Didn't look quite itself. They were winning games, but it still didn't seem like it was necessarily on time. It's the full complement now where the deep passing attack led by Zay Flowers has come online. Lamar Jackson's been a massive part of their rushing attack with Todd Monken's offense. He looks so comfortable at the controls, and this is exactly what we were expecting and hoping for when the Ravens made the move to go and to do something different at quarterback and to try and reach that next level now with Lamar at the helm, understanding what a unique gift you had there. This has checked every box and more for Baltimore Ravens fans in terms of what they could have wanted, and I think their quarterback, even though he doesn't have the gaudy numbers of his 2019 season to necessarily back it up, you cannot watch that game and say he doesn't influence every single iota of what happens on that offense in a way that gives that team the best chance to win.
I completely agree. And I think with Josh Allen, 16 interceptions, man, and it's certainly more than a few in the red zone. I don't know. I definitely lean toward Lamar in this. Now, we'll see how this ends up. They end up in Miami, and that game is for the AFC East for a home game. So we'll see how that ends up. But to me, it will be Lamar Jackson. I could see Christian McCaffrey getting votes. He leads by a few hundred yards in rushing. This year he has, 67 receptions as well. It's ridiculous what he has done. He is certainly deserved of MVP votes. And if Christian McCaffrey were to win it, I wouldn't bat an eye. Because I think he's absolutely that valuable.
Lamar can become the first quarterback here, GoJo, to win league MVP without a 1,000-yard rusher or receiver since Brett Favre in '96.
Yeah, and I think that's a good reminder, right, is we talked about the way this Baltimore passing attack has opened up, and we've seen guys step up. I mentioned Zay Flowers. Odell Beckham Jr.'s looked resurgent at times this year. There have been other guys that stepped up, Rashad Bateman in there, but that's still not a murderer's row of names that I just read you in that receiver room. That running back room lost Keaton Mitchell a couple of weeks ago, and Lamar Jackson has been able to not just keep them afloat during all of it, but evolve this offense to the point now where they should rightly be the Super Bowl favorite the way that they're playing on both offense and defense. Now, we'll get to the NFC in a little bit here because that picture not nearly as clear after what we saw this last weekend. Because coming up next, Philadelphia. You guys okay?
So the Eagles just lost a football game to the Cardinals, a team that entered this game with a 3-12 record, giving up 35 points and 449 yards to an offense that had not put up 30 points or more than 440 yards in a game all freaking year. Philly has lost 4 of its last 5, might have cost themselves the NFC East crown. So head coach Nick Sirianni, what say you?
Like I said, our goals are ahead of us. We got to get things fixed, and we got to get them fixed fast. We're not where we want to be right yet, as far as how we're playing right now, and how we're coaching right now. But we got time to get it fixed, and we'll get to work back to work tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, 49ers may have clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC, but they can thank the Eagles for making it much, much easier than initially anticipated. So, GoJo, Philadelphia coaches can't figure it out. They keep preaching together. And to some, maybe that's a sign of a fractured locker room. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not doing too much armchair psychology when it comes to the locker room, reading into comments the way people have tried to do with Jalen Hurts and other members of
A.J.
his
Brown,
team.
his whole not talking to the media thing because he doesn't have anything nice to say?
I think they're just frustrated. Like, I think a lot of what you're seeing from the Philadelphia Eagles right now is what you've seen from the Kansas City Chiefs in recent weeks, where you had Mahomes berating guys on the sideline or Travis Kelce spiking his helmet. These are really good teams that have not been bad in a while, especially a lot of the core players involved. And those are muscles that when you don't flex them very often are all of a sudden pretty jarring when you have to use them again. And those are generally good problems to have. Dad, the Eagles' formula is pretty simple for me. Their defense is bad this year. It got chewed up and wasn't addressed properly at the linebacker level in the offseason. Their nickel and down the spine of that defense have been a difficult go for them for the vast majority of the season, so much so that you thought you had to hand over play calling to Matt Patricia, and now you've gotten weird usage for players like Hassan Reddick that all of a sudden takes him out of pass rushing downs. And I think a D-line that has not been able to, despite a lot of the talent there, Dad, overcome what's going on behind them in a way that maybe that unit last year was able to when they were sacking the quarterback 70 times.
Yeah, I think a ton of pressure got put on the D-line, which, listen, you got to step up and meet the pressure if that's the case, because the back seven, has been a mash unit for sure. And they have struggled. Even when they started getting healthy, they have struggled. And I agree with you. The comments now are born out of frustration because this team is used to being really good, and going far. And obviously we see them to the Super Bowl last year. And now they're not playing anywhere near that. I think it's high frustration out of them. But the bottom line is the way they're playing, they're not going to go far the way it's going right now, because you're not going to fix things now. No, as they say, nobody's walking in that door. Nobody's coming in to save the day. This is who you have. You have to execute better. Now, you can get some guys a little more healthy than they've been. But the bottom line is you have to execute better. And when the pressure falls on the D-line, because they have some depth there, they have to come through better. That's just the way it is. You have to pick each other up, and they're just not doing it right now. This game just stunned me with Arizona. I mean, you want to talk about just checking one off, that you thought was going to be in the win column to what happened, and what may happen to them now. Is amazing. Though if you're sitting in the 5 slot, though, you will go on the road, but you may be going on the road to where? Tampa Bay or New Orleans. So not the worst thing in the world, because while both, New Orleans had a great game against Tampa Bay, we had been talking about Tampa Bay and what Baker Mayfield has been doing, but neither one of those teams put the fear of God in anybody, right? So it may, while you wouldn't have the game at home, that's where you may go, as opposed to, the Lions maybe having to play the Rams or the Cowboys. Then I'm trying to put in my head who the Cowboys would play. Maybe the Packers. With Jordan Love playing the way he's playing right now, they may be in a better position at 5, quite honestly. But either way, they have to fix what's going on X's and O's wise, or I should say execution-wise, in how they're playing.
Yeah, I do think there's some X and O's to that, too. I saw Ben Solak over at the Ringer and Philly Special podcast talking a lot about some of the things that look different defensively that Matt Patricia did, but you're right. This does seem and has seemed like a Jimmy's and Joe's problem for them for a while, and it does bring us to kind of a flat rest of the NFC for the playoffs, because despite what happened against Baltimore, San Francisco's still the best team in the NFC by a comfortable margin. We've seen that against the other elites in that conference when they've gone up against them. But outside of that, Dad, when you start to look down the rest, because of what you said, late season surges for different reasons by the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Rams. To me, they are the two most fascinating teams going into this. Los Angeles, to me, more so than Green Bay. We've seen some slip up from Green Bay in this stretch, but Jordan Love has been playing football towards the middle and back half of the season that looks like a guy that absolutely is going to continue to be the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. Some of their young receiving weapons have stepped up. They've started to figure out some O-line permutations. But the Los Angeles Rams are, I think, the most interesting team to me going into the postseason on either side of football. The Buffalo Bills could be in that regard as well, but the offensive outfit has just seemed so complete. They're so healthy in all the ways that you could hope for the Los Angeles Rams, and because the world outside of San Francisco has looked so cloudy for everybody else, you are instantly a player again after punching their ticket in.
Yeah, they are definitely a player. It wasn't the most impressive win in the world against the Giants, by a point. But still, they're a team that you kind of go, uh-oh, about. And that could be the matchup, because I think one of the best playing teams right now is Detroit. That could be the matchup in the first round. You could have the Rams going to Detroit, the swapping of quarterbacks, Goff and Stafford, meeting in the playoffs. And I tell you what, I love the way I keep in calling these games, and got to call the Rams and the Lions and San Francisco. We talk about the depth on the offense. San Francisco, the incredible depth, but Detroit's depth, especially with the two-headed rushing attack, and then the receivers, and the Rams' depth when they have everybody healthy, is so impressive. Those are the three teams. And the Lions, to me, and I give credit to your mom. Your mom called Lions-Browns Super Bowl at the beginning of the year. And while people may have laughed at that point, I don't know how many people are laughing right now. I still think it's a long shot because of the way Baltimore's playing. But both those teams, Cleveland and Detroit, are playing extremely well. And Detroit's going to get to play at home, host at least that first game. If it is against the Rams, man, would I look forward to that game.
That would be Stafford's first game back in Detroit since the trade. They've played since then, but it was in Los Angeles. And so his first time going back home, and we know people try and downplay this all the time, like, it'll be a playoff game. He'll be focused and all that stuff. But it's kind of like when we talk about senior days in college to me, Dad. That's still a place that means an awful lot to Matthew Stafford and vice versa because of all the years there, because of the way that he approached that. And so would be fascinating. I would imagine that'd be pretty close to a pick'em the way the Rams have played lately. Like some of this last week might affect that, but based on the way they've been playing and what they've got under center, which we've seen again in critical moments, I think we've seen why that trade was made. What Matthew Stafford offers you versus what Jared Goff offers you in some of those moments. So that is a fascinating part we will get to, by the way, coming up in the next segment here. The Detroit Lions and Cowboys officiating debacle from over the weekend, because you talk about that matchup that sits ahead of them now, because the Lions seem largely, most permutations of the way things could work out in Week 18 seem close to locked into the 3 seed after what happened in that game. But, because the Eagles have come back down to earth so hard, we saw it as the upper crust of the NFC of Philadelphia and San Francisco going into this year, coming off what we saw last season. One team has held up that bargain in the San Francisco 49ers. The other team is the Philadelphia Eagles, who, Dad, while they're still a very good football team with a lot of key pieces, defensively, the way they have played now for the back half of the season, I cannot trust them to win a meaningful game in the postseason.
Just what the power is on the offense, save from if in fact the first game is against Tampa Bay or New Orleans, not the strongest offenses in the world. But the rest of those teams, San Francisco, the Lions, the Rams, the Cowboys, all have very, very potent offenses for a Philadelphia defense that is struggling mightily. So there has to be a lot of concern in Philly.
Potent offenses that can hit Philadelphia where it hurts, right in the middle of the back end of that defense. When you think about CeeDee Lamb in the slot, the entire 49ers big skill arsenal in the middle of that field, the Lions and Ben Johnson throwing routes over the middle for Jared Goff, all of it no bueno if you're the Philadelphia Eagles looking for matchups out there in the postseason. But coming up next, Detroit versus everybody was on full display over the weekend, with some good and some heinously, horrifically bad. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Emerson Lazia here. And Dad, while we were all blinded by the lights on Monday of what college football threw at us, it should not obscure our view from one of the bigger miscarriages of justice over the weekend in the NFL. I don't know how people in Detroit are feeling waking up today. On one hand, I'd imagine there's a pretty good crossover in the contingent of Lions fans who are also Michigan Wolverines fans, pretty happy about their team playing in the national championship and playing really well. But on the other side, we talked about NFC playoff scenarios and the Detroit Lions factoring into that as the likely 3 seed at this point, because over the weekend they lost a game to the Dallas Cowboys that they actually won, were it not for the mistake of officiating. As late in that game, the Detroit Lions drive, they decide to go for 2. Dan Campbell is all in, wants to win this game, and then has a penalty called on him on a play where they threw to a what should have been tackle-eligible Eric Decker for the 2-point play, and instead, because of that, what in my mind, based on what we have seen from the views of it after the game, seems like a straight-up miss by the officials there, where you had Eric Decker and Dan Skipper, 2 of their offensive linemen, going over to the official, having one of them report eligible in Eric Decker in a way that Dan Campbell said after the game. I went to the officials and explained beforehand. I told them this is what we are going to do. This is the plan. And based on everything we've heard from the parties involved, Dad, this to me looks like a mistake in officiating that cost the Detroit Lions a game.
So a few things here. Over by the official was Penix Jr., Taylor Decker, and then Dan Skipper came running onto the field. And as Dan Skipper had said, I never reported because look where he lined up. There was no reason for him to report. He was like at the right tackle. Penix Jr. was like at a tight end position, but on the line. And then there was a wide receiver on that side on the line. So he was ineligible. So there would be no reason for him to report. None whatsoever. And he said he did not report. It seemed to me that as Sewell and Decker, because Goff told Decker to go report, and Decker walked over, and you could see him with his right hand kind of rubbing his hand down his body. And that's the sign to the official that I am an eligible receiver with an ineligible number. So he went to and as he was going to the official looked at Skipper running on the field. And Skipper had been that guy 2 other times, I think, during this game where he had been the guy coming in saying, I'm eligible. So immediately you saw the ref run over to the defense and do that hand signal and then tell the defense what number said he's eligible. And they said 70 was eligible, which meant 68 was not. So illegal touching, blah, 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 whatever. So there's a couple of things here. First, I will not sit here and say if the ref got it right that play would have worked, because understand what would have happened then. The ref would have, if he got it right, would have went to the defense and said 68 is eligible. The defense had no reason to cover Decker because the ref had said 70 was eligible. So they had no reason to cover him. If the defense heard 68 was eligible, they may have covered him. They may have said, okay, this guy's eligible. We have someone to account for him on the play. So I'm not just going to easily say that, look what they did, they scored a touchdown. Well, the defense did not believe Decker was eligible because the ref got it wrong there. So let me just say that right out of the gate. And the other thing I started to hear was, well, Detroit was trying to confuse the defense by having Sewell over there, Decker over there, and then Skipper. Well, Decker had to go over there to report, but then Skipper running toward the official. Why Skipper just didn't run right to the huddle, I don't know. If, in fact, they were trying to confuse the defense, Mike, I don't understand that, because as people were wondering that, I said on Twitter, that referee is going to the defense and telling them exactly what number is eligible. So you're not confusing anybody because the ref is going to tell you who is eligible on the play. And somebody said, well, are you listening to that? I said, me as a D tackle? No, because I'm not in coverage. But I guarantee you, the back half, the player, or the back 7, the players who are in coverage, they are going to want to know who's eligible to determine where their coverage is going to be.
I agree with you on that, Dad, but to me, it's the same idea as why would you shift in motion before a play? Because, yes, everyone's going to be dialed in on that, but you just need one guy to bust. And so you're trying to give them as much eye candy as possible. So that's my thought process there is that's why you would do it that way, because in that moment for a play that I'd imagine you've schemed for weeks. Like, I have to imagine the Detroit Lions have been practicing this for a while, have gone through all the machinations of it with the express purpose of, just like all the fun shifts and motions that Ben Johnson does, trying to see if they can get just one guy to bite, even with what you accounted for there.
You're right. And they did it. They seemed to do everything right. If that, in fact, was what they were trying to do, Skipper runs toward the ref. They got 3 people by the ref. If, in fact, they're trying to confuse. Unfortunately, they confused the ref. And remember, Dan said, and this is what coaches do before the game. Hell, you were on the bad end of this. Jim Harbaugh, when he was coaching Stanford, and Notre Dame went to play Stanford, and you were the center. He told the officials before the game, watch the center, which is you, when he snaps his head up after looking back. He does it in kind of a start the play motion, and you got called a couple of times. So this is what coaches do. Dan Campbell went to the official and completely explained that play and who was going to be eligible, and the ref just blew it. The ref just absolutely blew this thing.
He did, and that to me is the biggest part of this, Dad, is because the Lions did everything that they were supposed to, and the officials made a mistake and then wouldn't admit to it. Like, you read the pool report after, and they basically called the Lions liars in a way that every bit of film that we've watched since then refutes. That, to me, cannot happen, and that's where now the NFL, who routinely steps in to protect officials in a way that I kind of understand, because they're sort of the arm of the league involved in all these games. Dad, when players make mistakes in games, guys get cut. There are consequences to this, and I understand officiating crews get downvoted in terms of their postseason eligibility and being able to ref in the playoffs. That can happen, but something else has to happen, because you cannot just have someone come out and demonstrate zero accountability in a moment where it is absolutely, it seems like a gaffe on their part.
Completely agree. I mean, and you're right, the video, why else would didn't Taylor Decker's wife even tweet? Yeah, he was going to the ref to wish him a Merry Christmas. I mean, she had which was great, a great sarcastic tweet.
Yeah.
But again, we're talking about, were they trying to confuse the defense? And unfortunately, it confused the official, because you're right, this is a play you work on, and as Taylor Decker said after the game, I did what I was told. Dan Skipper, I never reported, but it made it look as they were all by the official, okay, who was going to be the eligible guy, which the Brad Allen, I think, who his crew will not be officiating in the playoffs, I don't believe.
No.
Goes to the Cowboys and says it's number 70. It's a shame, because what a game, and this is all talked about instead of CeeDee Lamb. 13 receptions, 227 yards, and a touchdown. The man was a wrecking crew. What a game that he had that just kind of got lost in this because of the end of the game controversy.
It really was. And, Dad, he was about the only one. Like, he was the only source of offense for a Dallas team that was kind of boom or bust in that way. Shout out to the Lions defense that had largely held them in check. The Lions, it was a lot like the Michigan-Alabama game, Dad, where they were more dominant on both lines of scrimmage in that game. The Detroit offensive line was doing their thing for the most part, even including this play. And the Detroit defensive front, down in and down out, was stuffing the Cowboys in a way that I don't think a lot of people accounted for coming in based on reputation. So those would have all been conversations that would have been had. And you're right, CeeDee Lamb, an incredible individual effort, but he was the one that kind of had to pull Dallas through this.
Yeah, he did. That's why, I mean, are we searching for that team that can compete with San Francisco? I mean, who is going to be, who do we see? You know, and I match up a Detroit or a Rams team which can match kind of the depth on the offense, but then it comes down to the defensive side as well. Right now, it's Baltimore a step ahead of everybody, and it's San Francisco a step ahead of everybody, it seems, at this point.
Yep, everybody else has their warts after that. And Detroit, certainly, I think especially with their defense showing up a little bit more on tape than I would have expected down the stretch of the season, is going to have their day in court with all this. But now that road does get more difficult, because as we said, this game had real-life consequences for the Detroit Lions, who now lose out more than likely in most iterations on a chance at the 2 seed, all because of a mistake by the people wearing the 3rd uniform in the football game.
Back here on GoJo and Golic, it is time now for Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with code GOJO, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. So in this edition of Crash It or Trash It, it's going out to those who are still holding on to Buffalo Bills division winner tickets. This one has been a roller coaster ride this season, opening at plus 135 to begin the year, getting up to as high as plus 1,600 in Week 14. Now it's a winner-take-all matchup against Miami for the AFC East in Week 18. And that is where we are going to start our superlative segment for this week, because there are a few divisions still up for grabs here, gentlemen. That leads us into the first of our Week 17 superlatives. Guys, who is most likely to win their division? What do you think, huh? Be honest.
Yeah, we got plenty of Week 18 clinching scenarios, Dad, but starting with that one, the Bills versus the Dolphins, we got a long time before this matchup's going to be played in Miami. Some banged up coming out of that last game. Bradley Chubb, the second of their great pass rushers, lost to an ACL injury at the end of this game in a way that was just brutal. You had Tua Tagovailoa sit out the end of the fourth quarter with a sore shoulder. It sounds like that was as much about the game flow as it was managing that, but I lean Buffalo in this one, Dad. We saw earlier in the year the things that the Bills have that can bother this Dolphins outfit. As great as they are, I just think at this point, the trajectory of their seasons and the injuries that have hurt the Dolphins versus the way Buffalo's been playing as of late has them going in opposite directions.
So I can't pick this game because I'll be calling this game, and you're not kidding. Chubb, you lose Phillips earlier in the year. I mean, your two best pass rushers gone. Mostert's been nicked up as well. I mean, really amazing as they took a beating last week. Certainly, as far as Emerson's question of most likely to win their division, I would go, and there's a lot of teams involved in this, but I would go with the case of just only one scenario, not a win and something else has to happen, right? It would be, an or, then that's fine. Like Cowboys getting in there with a win or an Eagles loss. So I would go with just one. In all honesty, I'd probably lean down toward the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning their division because they're playing Carolina, right? They're playing Carolina. The Bucs just win and they're in. I would be stunned at a loss here, quite honestly. Now, is Tampa Bay one of the better teams in the league? No, I don't think so. But I think of all the teams we're looking at, Jacksonville clinches with a win over the Titans. But, man, you got Trevor Lawrence, who's been nicked up. Colts need help. Texans need help. Eagles need help. So I pick somebody who just, and Bills, Dolphins, like I said, I can't pick it because I'm calling it, but those are two good teams. So even if I could pick that game, I wouldn't in this particular question. I would probably still lean toward Tampa Bay getting the win over one of the worst, if not the worst team in all the NFL to win that division.
Yeah, no, that's probably a pretty safe bet at this point. While we had that weirdness with Atlanta the other week, that's just as much an Atlanta problem and the fact that it's the NFC South this year. Like, once we pan back out, you were right talking about the playoff scenarios before. When you've looked, the NFC South fight's been kind of interesting this year because the Bucs have exceeded expectations and the Saints and the Falcons had the easiest schedules in football. Then you pan back out and remember there are real teams playing out there and you go, okay, we probably don't have to worry too much about this. So I'm I'm with you on that one there. The rest of it, we'll have all week to kind of work our way through, but most everyone else does come with that and trying to list out clinching scenarios is the thing that makes my eyes glaze over faster than fake playoff scenarios for the college football playoff during the year. So we'll save you guys all the struggle on that and just say there's a bunch of interesting worlds where a lot of teams, especially in the AFC, have a very real shot of still making it to the postseason. Dad, let's get to our second superlative, the most disrespected from this last weekend, and talk about this Russell Wilson thing going on out here in Denver. Just an absolute PR fiasco for the Broncos, who benched Russell Wilson this weekend. They go out there and actually then back it up and play pretty well and get the win there, but everything that led up to that moment, Dad, that Russell Wilson has addressed, by the way, in terms of the Denver Broncos coming to him after their win over the Kansas City Chiefs, asking him to restructure the injury guarantee portion of his contract, and if not, threatening him with being benched at that time for the last month of the season, where we've talked about Russell Wilson has not been the reason they've lost football games, has played better than some people expected, albeit still not playing up to that price tag. Dad, in all your years playing and covering the NFL, have you ever seen anything quite as ugly as this playing out with this particular situation?
Yes. I mean, if this just happened to get played out in public, this happens a lot. I mean,
but I'm saying the public nature of it. That's the factor in this.
Yeah. Is that the best thing in the world? No. But what it shows you is this is a business. It's always been a business, and you got to take care of you. This stuff happens. There are injury protection deals in a lot of quarterbacks' deals, and even other players' deals, to where behind the scenes, basically the team will say, we thought that maybe about Kyler Murray. I think he's got a $28 or $29 million, something like that, injury protection. We wondered if he'd even see the field this year. And for those that may not know what we're saying, is that Russell Wilson had a, 30 or 39 million. If he had gotten hurt and didn't pass the physical in March, that injury protection number would have kicked in for like $39 million. So basically Denver did what other teams have done and said, you know what, we're not going to play this guy because we don't want him to get hurt. This one just happened to play out in public. And this didn't shock me one bit. Not one bit. I mean, this is the ugly business side of football. I don't blame Russell Wilson one bit for standing his ground. Other players will give in. Listen, there are players every year that take a pay cut. Don't restructure. That's a different thing. They have to take a pay cut or they're going to be cut. That's the NFL. You negotiate a deal, and then a year they can say, listen, take a $500,000, take $1 million, take a $2 million haircut, or we're going to release you. And not everybody's Russell Wilson. Some guys have to do it to stay on the team. But it's a business. It's a business that this one played out in public. Did it turn ugly? Yeah, it turned ugly because we saw the hot dog being made. We saw the ingredients of the hot dog.
We saw the ingredients being made because Russell Wilson decided to invite us into the kitchen on this.
Yes.
That's the other factor is they decided to mess with the bull, and they got the horns on this because Russell Wilson, it sounds like, I think per Mike Sando at The Athletic, decided to leak this because he was threatened with being benched and ultimately was benched.
And because he's Russell Wilson. He's going to be on another team next year. Right? But there are players, again, who have to go through this that aren't Russell Wilson. So you know what they're not going to do? They're not going to make it public. They're not going to do it because they want to be on another team. Russell Wilson is in a position where he can go out and say it. And remember how this started with Russell Wilson. You know, with Shawn Payton right out of the gate. The only people in this building are going to be, Bronco employees, meaning any of the people, Russell had around weren't going to be around. This started contentious, but this is Shawn Payton get paid a lot of money, and the owner said, we need to build a winner here. And a lot of us never thought that the Shawn Payton, Russell Wilson styles were going to mesh. And while Russell Wilson played better this year than he did last year, this is a complete business decision, which is made all the time in the NFL, but because of the circumstances of who it was, Russell can make this public because he's Russell Wilson and he's going to have a job somewhere, that this looks ugly to the public, but I'm just telling you, this is business.
Is he going to have a job somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Mike, he can sign. He is guaranteed money next year. He can sign, I think, for less than $3 million somewhere, and the rest of his money is paid by the Broncos. teams can get him for a monster discount because he's guaranteed that money next year. So, and the Broncos have to pay it if it's I believe, I want to check on this, if it's a small enough amount by another team, Denver is paying the bulk of that, what is owed. So you could actually get him on a discount.
But like, as Russell Wilson, the player, who, like, put it this way, who are teams that are looking at Russell Wilson, the player, after what we've seen? Because while he has played better, he's a guy that you kind of have to manage around, right? You're not asking him to go out there and lead the charge. You're asking him to just drive with hands at 10-2 right now. As Mina Kimes famously said on her YouTube channel, you're not letting Russ cook anymore. You're asking Russ to make snacks. And I just wonder how many teams that is going to be appealing to in 2024 as a starter in the NFL at this juncture of his career.
The Patriots would love somebody who could make a simple snack right now.
Patriots, Raiders.
Commanders, maybe.
Let me ask it this way, Mike. Let me throw it back to you. Next year, Russell Wilson will not be on the Denver Broncos. Will he be a starting quarterback for another NFL team? I say yes.
Probably yes, but I'll put it to you like this. Yeah. If you're a team in the NFL and you find out Russell Wilson's your quarterback next year, are you excited? Because my answer is no.
Well, whoever takes them would be excited because it's probably better than what they have. That's why they're taking them. So there might be some excitement.
This is not like your long-term answer. I don't think there's you're on the back nine of Russell Wilson's career, and none of the teams that we mentioned, Patriots, Raiders, Commanders, look like playoff teams in my mind if Russell Wilson's under center.
So here's what I say. If you get a chance, a lot depends on where you are. If I'm a veteran on a team, I want Russell Wilson and not a rookie. Because while the franchise may draft one of these rookies and say, we're preparing for the future, and I'm a 9-year, 8-year vet, I don't give a damn about that. I want to win right now. So I want to see Russell Wilson on my team. So I think a lot of it depends on the team. Because we know there are 53 or 52 other guys in that locker room who want to win now and know that if you have a rookie running the show, again, Houston's the exception, not the rule, that you're most likely not making the playoffs. So if you have veterans on a team, they sure as hell would want to have Russell Wilson, even though maybe he clashes personality-wise and makes people, raise an eyebrow a little bit, that they would want him over a rookie quarterback because they, as veterans, don't want to sit there and go through some rebuilding.
Seems like a bridge guy at this point in his career. Like, he's played well enough at this junctures this year to win. He can do that. But if you're trying to talk about ceilings there, it's a moderately high floor, and I don't think an extraordinarily high ceiling. The biggest victory in all of this, by the way, though, Russell Wilson managing PR here, everybody was on his side, it seemed, coming off of this. For Russell Wilson, who has ridden the PR roller coaster since leaving Seattle, a lot of his former teammates airing grievances once that finally happened and that marriage dissolved. This has been a guy who has been basically universally looked at coming off this and said he got mistreated in this situation and will be painted in a favorable light coming off of it.
So this is one of those, Mike, where it's billionaires and millionaires. And a lot of times the millionaires are looked upon, look at how they're being wronged by the billionaires. So does anybody at the end of the day really care? How it went down doesn't look good. But as I said, this is a business that just went public, and the lesser person who makes the lesser money is perceived as being screwed by the big bosses, the big money people. So certainly you're on the side of the player, and I get it. I completely understand that.
Right. I think we're almost always on the side of the player here, right? That's just, own biases walking into this, wanting to see those guys get it. As far as coach and player treatment, Dad, a lot has been made of the way Shawn Payton treated Russell Wilson throughout this. Did that stand out to you in any way that seemed abnormal?
Well, as I said, we knew from the beginning this relationship. We all questioned this relationship. And, a lot of us have raised an eyebrow about how Russell Wilson goes about his business sometimes, even teammates. I think you're going to continue to find teammates talking about him. Maybe not the most liked guy in the world, but as I said, you don't have 53 guys holding hands singing Kumbaya. It doesn't work that way. You want a guy that's going to go out and perform and try and help you win. And if he does that, nobody cares what the personality is like as long as you're helping the team win. And when he was horrible last year, as well as that team was horrible last year, all that goes out the window. But he played better this year. Shawn Payton came in and just listen, Shawn Payton came in and did what any company that is floundering does when they bring in a new boss. Change it. Make us a winner, right? This team last won in 2015 with Peyton Manning winning the Super Bowl, and through then it's been dreck as far as quarterbacks. So this company, think of it as a company, has been horrible. So a new boss comes in and the owners say, man, go do your thing. Do what you have to do to get us back. Unfortunately, it involved getting rid of a guy who hasn't even started his extension yet. I mean, That's the mind-boggling thing here. If they cut him, which they're going to have to do because nobody's trading for that, it results in an $85 million cap charge plus $39 million in guaranteed money for 24. Now, the caps can be split up over a couple of years, but then he's due $37 million in 2025. So it was a horrible deal when you gave your guy, Shawn Payton, the power, and now you're going, oh, God. There's a lot of money going on our side. This better work. But Shawn Payton is doing exactly what anybody that hires somebody to clean up the mess would do. He came in it, and he's doing it his way. We're just seeing a lot of it, like I said, through the public eye, and it just doesn't look pretty sometimes.
Yeah, Russell Wilson had played better this season, but still hadn't played up to the number that he was brought over to Denver at. And so I think we can all understand. We just didn't think, given the financial constraints you mentioned, that they would actually pull the trigger on something like this and make it happen. I think that's the startling part. But Shawn Payton coming in and saying, my future here is going to be tied. And we always thought this to Russell Wilson's success, and balking at that based on what he's seen and saying, I'd like to roll the dice with somebody else. Not all that surprising. And I think the thing that exacerbates all this, Dad, is Shawn Payton came in and did it coaching like Bill Parcells. Like he came in coaching like the old world, where in the new world, what do we get more often? Mike McDaniel coming in and showing Tua Tagovailoa 700 play reel of why he's great and rebuilding his confidence and doing all these things that just probably are never been in Shawn Payton's DNA, given the way that he came up in the NFL. And so, yeah, it definitely looks different and is a bit jarring, and we got to see way more of it play out. Is it ugly and probably not fitting of someone of Russell Wilson's stature? Absolutely. But it's still something that we've seen a lot more often. I just think a lot less often in this modern day and age with football and the way people tend to approach this.
And it's a good point about Shawn Payton and the way he's going about his business as opposed to the young coordinators that get head coaching jobs and how they do it. It's just a different world right now. And a lot of these guys that have been around for a while aren't going to change. They can adjust some, like people have said, Tom Coughlin adjusted toward the end of his career because he was about as hardcore as you could possibly be. So is there an adjustment that you have to make? Sure, but you're still not going to lose the values and ways you were brought up coaching players today. And Shawn Payton showed that. But we're just in a day and age where we kept thinking, well, they're tied to Russell Wilson. Nothing they can do about it. They're tied to him. Where now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, we haven't seen, we're starting to see higher dead money amounts on quarterbacks at times. But this, again, we haven't even got to the extension. And they haven't even gotten to the extension.
I tell you what this
is
does.
going to be gone.
I tell you what this does. The amount of pressure on the Broncos and on Shawn Payton to stick the next version of this that comes. Because now if you're Shawn Payton, think about how you came into Denver. It's not to absolve him of anything that's going on. You came in and you burned the entire previous staff in your first interview over the summer. And now you very clearly tried to push the quarterback out because, like you said, it was abundantly clear. He just probably didn't like Russell Wilson as his quarterback walking in based on the things that we saw in that. And so now if you're Shawn Payton, there's pressure on you to not only help handpick who comes next, but to make it work with somebody that's not Drew Brees now. Like that is going to instantly turn up the heater on Shawn.
Oh, it is because of the handy, how strapped they are money-wise because of the dead money and what he's going to have to do. But he basically is changing the scene there. It's like The Rock in Walking Tall. After he gets voted in to be the sheriff, right? He gets voted in to be the sheriff. He takes his pickup truck, he goes to the station, and the guy he beats comes out and says, hey, you beat me fair and square, but all these deputies here, I can vouch for them to be on your squad. And he goes, you're all fired. I mean, that's Shawn Payton just saying, you're gone. Unless you abide by what I want, Russell Wilson. and get rid of the injury settlement or injury clause, you're gone. We're going to redo this thing. And that's where he is, man. He's a guy who's been around for a while, and I think you hit the nail on the head. He's not Mike McDaniel. He's not one of these young coaches trying to deal with the player of today. Because in all honesty, Russell Wilson isn't like a player of today. Russell Wilson's a player of yesteryear. He's been around for a little while. But you're right. Sean's got to hit it. Sean's got to hit it now hamstrung by some cap issues.
9:19 Eastern, January 2nd, 2024. I'd imagine the first and only Walking Tall reference that anybody in sports media is going to make in a breakdown this year. Dad, I never saw it coming. An absolute masterclass. Bravo. The Rock back on Raw and back on this show. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We obviously had a ton to react to from college football last night because of everything that went on the field. Off the field, it was interesting, Dad, as I know there are a lot of people that seem divided at times or that want to be cynical about the Rose Bowl and all of the pageantry around it. I think the Rose Bowl committee takes themselves way too seriously and at times holds up progress in college football in a way that's annoying. But there is no denying that being out there and getting to see that setting in person, that stadium, the pomp and circumstance of it all, it does hit different. There really is not a lot like it that I've encountered. And I saw J.J. Watt tweet about it, pound for pound, Dad. That is the nicest grass that I have ever seen or felt in my life.
Yeah, I've never, in college, never played on that field, so I don't have any reference to that. But it's you know, I agree they take themselves a little too seriously. It has to be part of this process now. But the stealth bomber flyover, is there anything better than that? I mean, it was just incredible. And then, obviously, when you get a great game to boot, it adds to it. But it all worked out because you thought, Rose Bowl a while ago was going to balk at how the new system was going to be, but you knew there's no way they were going to. They weren't going to be left out of all of this to try and, stay on their high horse as far as what the Rose Bowl was. So they were going to acquiesce, and they did, and they should. And it was a great game, and it's a great setting. We loved it. It was fantastic. So let's enjoy that.
Absolutely. And you had all of that, the sunset, it's all perfect. Like it really is one of the more unique experiences. You have that on one side during the game action, and then in the Sugar Bowl, you had the B-roll shot from Bourbon Street that went a little wild on somebody who filmed that for ESPN when you had someone popping the top right in the middle of a shot coming back from break here. Both very quintessentially of the area. Like, you captured the essence of Bourbon Street around New Year's, so I guess job well done, ESPN.
Hell yeah, brother.
It's all about getting your beads. All about getting your beads, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah.
Apparently it wasn't that moment there. And for anyone missed it, go look it up on God's internet and you'll see exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, don't do it on a work computer, though.
Yeah,
no, don't. It's there and they're there. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know one member of sports media that might go looking for that based on his ad search history. But we'll instead look at some other comments that I thought were interesting coming off the weekend, Dad. The college football playoff, I saw a lot of people in the aftermath of this, and you mentioned it off the top of the show. Hey, Florida State probably could have done what Alabama did in that game, as they were the ones left on the outside of this. We saw the other version of that after Florida State played over the weekend against Georgia in the Orange Bowl, where they lost by 60 points in a game that was never close, in a game where Florida State had 20 or 30 opt-out players, either between injury, the portal, or the draft, that made the team look completely different. And I always thought using the outcomes of these games in bowl season as a reason to retroactively legislate what should have happened in the CFP discussion is silly. You make those decisions based on the body of work that leads up to it, and then we understand circumstances change in the postseason surrounding all these games. And I thought Kirby Smart, the head coach of Georgia, who is now fully transcending into his Saban era as the man who has largely been on top of college football, pontificating about what he thinks should happen. And he stood up there in the post-game press conference, Dad, and looked at everybody in that room and said, something's got to change. I hope everyone saw what happened here and basically said this served no one. Florida State in their current form, going out there to play in that game, served nobody, and now we need to fix this system. So how right do you think he is in his assessment of the sport right now, Dad?
Well, I mean, listen, we all, it's like if you don't make the playoffs or before it was the BCS, when it was just two teams, it was like, okay, what are the other matchups? What other good games can we get? So you were able to look forward to, especially some New Year's Six bowls, right? And see the matchups and say, okay, we're not getting this in the playoffs or for the title, but boy, oh boy, this could be a great matchup. And that's gone by the wayside. And it's not going back, at least in present form, because players are going to opt out. Players are going to transfer. That's not going to change. What is happening is things that have happened in sports all the time. Things change. How do you adapt to that change? So what do? There are so many people that hate all the bowl games anyway, right? I mean, this isn't just this year or last year we're saying there's too many bowls. This has been going on since I was doing Mike and Mike at ESPN. And my answer had always been, then don't watch them. Nobody is forcing you to turn on said bowl game. You don't have to watch it. So why complain there's too many when you don't have to sit down and subject yourself to them? This has been going on for decades. Now it's just at a bigger point because so many players are out. Now, when you used to look forward to a Florida State, Georgia matchup in the past, now you knew you weren't going to get it because what were there, 20 opt-outs, I think, for Florida State? So it wasn't going to happen. So you tell me the feasible, and even we had never had an opt-out or a portal transfer of the last four teams standing, but you had it here with a backup quarterback. Remember, if Quinn Ewers ever went down, Malik Murphy was the guy. It wasn't Arch Manning. And Malik Murphy left. He left. Yeah. He went into the portal. So he was gone from Texas. It would have been Arch Manning had Quinn. And Quinn Ewers did smack his head off the turf, and you thought he would maybe miss a little bit of time. So I don't know how this changes, Mike. You can't, and you can explain better than I, that the obvious answer would be change the portal date. So these guys don't have to jump in the portal until after the bowl games, and then they can all play, and then the only opt-outs you would have are a small percentage of players, albeit the stars of the team, that would miss because they want to go prepare for the NFL draft. But you wouldn't have 20 others who are opting to go to a different college, but you can't just change the portal dates.
No, because you've got to have guys enrolled by a certain point in January for schools academically. That's the biggest hang-up in all this, is because we're still treating this like quote-unquote amateurism and NCAA athletics and not the business that a lot of people see it for now, you've got to abide by those rules. And so you're not going to be able to change the portal date. Nicole Arbach at The Athletic did a great article about some of the potential changes there. A lot of it, and like, I don't want to put this all just on the players too. Hugh Freeze gave you the goods. Auburn's head coach came out after that loss and basically said, I hadn't been involved in the game planning a ton because I was worried about recruiting. We've seen other coaches that have turned the page and taken new jobs. Plenty of these teams were being coached by interim guys. Notre Dame played an Oregon State team that was a shell of itself with a coach who wasn't going to be there after this tenure likely either. So all of those things are factors because the calendar's jacked up. You can definitely ditch the early signing period, so it's one less thing on those coaches' plates in terms of getting those recruits signed in December, another thing they've got to factor in, and just move it back to February. I think the most interesting result, because not every bowl is going to be the Cheez-It or Pop-Tart Bowl either. We'll get to some of the discussion around that, where you've got the fun, goofy bowl that can lean into all the bits. Although I do think every bowl sponsor should be a product, and I saw someone say this, that you could buy at a gas station. It should be a food product you could buy at a gas station. We'd all be better for it in the non-New Year's Six bowls, and that should be the case. But the other interesting thing Nicole put out there that I think is worth exploring is dissolve the conference affiliations with bowl games. For everyone that's unaware, every bowl game has conference affiliations based on the tiers that teams finish in inside their respective conferences. They've got tie-ins to certain bowl games. And as we're watching the conference structure dissolve before our very eyes and change drastically in that world, I do think having more agency for the bowl games to pick matchups where you can kind of forecast what's going to happen, because, Dad, in 2023 in bowl season, this is a real all politics are local situation. You've got understandable reasons why a lot of players are going to change and why a lot of coaches are going to go take jobs and move on to greener pastures. And I think that's going to be variable each year because so many team situations are different in terms of who might be coming back, what your team situation looks like for next year. I think the Georgias and Bamas of the world deserve a lot of credit for creating an environment where players are clearly bought in enough to want to come back and play in these big-time games. We saw it with the draft-eligible guys from Bama last year, and we saw it with Georgia from this year. But everywhere else, you're trying to hit a moving target, and I think having a bowl system that reflects that might be helpful.
And I still don't know what fixes it, Mike, because for years we've had guys sit out who are preparing for the NFL, and we've had coaches change teams. The new thing here is the portal, and it's by far the biggest amount of players. So I honestly don't know the remedy for that. I don't know how that's going to change, and if it doesn't change, this is what bowl season is going to look like. Then we have to rely on very creative bowls like the Pop-Tart Bowl.
We have to rely on that and on volume. College sports is its lesser counterpart to the pros. You don't win with better quality in college football. You never have. You win with volume, and that's always been true of bowl season.
the new segment we are calling Tums and Yums. It is sponsored by Tums. With Tums Fast Heartburn Relief, your favorite foods are never a gamble. It really is the perfect sponsor for this show because basically we just talk food here. And we have a perfect crossover of food and sport during bowl season when the giant Pop-Tart sacrificed himself for the winner of the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando. Mr. Pop-Tart walked, though, so Giant Cheez-It could run, although this dude didn't want to suffer a similar fate and fall victim to a ritual sacrifice. So the guys have an expert standing by to talk college football, a man who watched in person Mr. Pop-Tart get eaten alive and stood there and did nothing to save him.
Yeah, you know what? We do have to probably talk about that elephant in the room here. As you're right, Tums could not be a more perfect sponsor for a show that is basically walking heartburn. They saved my life during college football as a 300-pounder walking out to practice each and every day. But they couldn't save the Pop-Tarts' life. So let's talk to Anish Shroff, ESPN and Carolina Panthers play-by-play announcer, who has been on the call, Dad, for I think two of the most important games in modern bowl history. As Anish and I were on the call for the 2021 Duke's Mayo Bowl with the Mayo Bath heard around the world. And now, Anish, what was it like watching history unfold yet again as you were on call for NC State and Kansas State in the inaugural Pop-Tarts Bowl this year?
It was mesmerizing. It really was, because the night before the game, doing my journalistic diligence, I wanted details on the exact way and the process that all this would go down. I said, you have an edible mascot. We knew that much. So I wanted to know the manner in which he was eaten. And I had questions. I said, are we going to do, sort of like a kid's birthday party where everybody breaks off a piece and there's a mom or dad who puts it on a plate and hands it to everybody and you pass it down? Are we going to do it in an organized, civilized way? Or again, the television part of it, what's better television? What if you go full Nat Geo and you just attack this thing like a vicious pack of jackals descending upon its prey? I mean, that is great television, and they found this happy medium. So they would not tell me the night before. So before the game, I see this guy come out of a giant toaster right at midfield a few minutes before kickoff, and I go, okay, you know what? You want to do ritual sacrifice? I'll do ritual sacrifice. Let's go.
So along those lines, as I mentioned, you did the Duke's Mayo Bowl with Mike a couple of years ago, where Mike sticks an Oreo in the mayonnaise and eats it, and the winning head coach, got a bunch of mayo dumped on him. So you have done two incredible bowls from that standpoint. Do you think, we had just been talking about bowl games and how bad they've been because of the portal and all the changes. Do you think this is where bowl games need to go, is kind of say, don't look at the game, look over here. Look at this Pop-Tart that we're all going to eat at the end of the game, or look at this jar of mayonnaise that we're going to dump on the coach. Is that where the bowls need to end up going?
Yeah, and there will be some old crotchety writers, the ones who dragged us a few years ago, Mike, because we had fun, not forbid, on the air, and we didn't value the sanctity of college football and 18 to 22-year-olds playing when a bunch of guys are not playing because they're going to another school, or they want to get ready for an NFL dream that may or may not come true. So there will be those people in that corner. How dare you not just call the game, and how dare you make it about food, and how dare you do all this? But there's an entertainment factor, and you guys have both done bowl games. There are so many of them where the sponsor just basically slaps their name on it, and that's it. And you don't hear from them. You don't see them. They're not visible. They don't really care. And essentially for us as broadcasters, it's a name on a card. It is this bowl sponsored by this, or sponsor, and then read the name of the bowl game. When you have Duke's Mayo, when you have Pop-Tarts and Cheez-Its and some of these other brands that say, we can laugh at ourselves, we can lean into this, we can have fun, especially this time of the year, I think it makes it more fun just for the casual viewer. Listen, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, we got I don't know what the ratings are for the playoff games and then the New Year's Six games. I'm sure they were higher, but up until, the last couple of days, that was the highest rated bowl game to date as of, I guess, December 29th.
Yeah, it was proof in the pudding, or in this case in the Pop-Tart, that people tuned in. People were interested in that. And everyone played their part in this, including you, Anish. Shocked and horrified to find out going into this game, you had never actually had a Pop-Tart before going into this one. So I always gave you credit at the Mayo Bowl. You dove right in a situation that was much more skewed towards my disgusting food habits than yours. What was your first Pop-Tart experience like here?
Yeah, so to backtrack, I think it's shocking. You and I spent an entire season together on the road, and I didn't have a Pop-Tart. That's failure on your part.
That's bad coaching here. I used to watch Anish's disgusted face when I would go and pile drive Uncrustables by the truck before games, and so I should have taken that next step in pocketed jelly-related foods and given you a Pop-Tart. That is on me.
You know what? I got a full disclosure here before we get into the Pop-Tarts. I have become a fan and a consumer of Uncrustables. So,
I'm like a proud dad.
Not the grape jelly one. I think it was the raspberry, the strawberry one. The strawberry one. You know what? I didn't give these. I judged before I tried. So with the Pop-Tarts, for whatever reason, when I grew up as a kid, it's not like we had healthy food. We had Lucky Charms and Trix and Fruity Pebbles and all the gross cereal that you're not supposed to eat. We had Elio's Pizza. For whatever reason, maybe because Pop-Tarts didn't have enough coupons in the Sunday paper, we didn't have Pop-Tarts home. We just didn't have Pop-Tarts, so I never tried them. And then I got to college, and they were there, but I never had them growing up, and just never had the urge to try them. And time passes on, and all of a sudden you're an adult. And then, you know what? I've never had a Pop-Tart. So when I opened it up, I didn't even know there were 2 in a bag versus 1. I had no idea. So yeah, the first experience of the Pop-Tart, they were good. It was very sugary. I mean, that sugar high hit. Probably one commercial break after I had the Pop-Tart, I said, whoa, you can feel it coursing through your bloodstream. So yeah, it was good.
I cannot believe it. That's 2 people. Jessie Cofield, who normally sitting where Emerson sits, she had never had a Pop-Tart when we were talking about the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And now I can't believe you. I can't believe you haven't had it. So I'm glad.
Yeah, but you can't believe. You and your son can't believe because you're 2 offensive linemen. So you've tried every single food that's probably out there on the planet.
Whoa, I'm a defensive lineman.
Defensive
lineman. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Still a lineman. Still a lineman. Understood.
A type 2 diabetic. You've had Pop-Tarts before.
There you go. Hey, on actually a serious note, we were just talking about how these bowl games with all the transfer and the portal, how it's changed. Do you have a way to, everybody wants to fix this. Do you have a way that it could make the bowl games more competitive so we don't get the Georgia-Florida State game we got?
Yeah, I would like to see it at the beginning of the season, get rid of week 0 and have a 2.5 week lead up into week 1 and play these bowl games then. And what do you get? You get great non-conference matchup. You get exposure for the group of 5 teams. You get exposure for the smaller conference teams. They get the ESPN, ABC, Fox windows, whatever they are. I think do it at the beginning of the season, especially now if you're going to expand the playoff. I want to see more non-conference matchups early on. You got teams that don't schedule non-conference matchups, teams that go to the playoff. Michigan's a great example. Michigan played nobody in non-conference. Doesn't take away what they've done, and they're going to play for a championship. But to me, these games mean something. The regular season means something. There's more teams that have a stake in potentially getting to the playoff. Play the bowls at the beginning of the season.
It is interesting. There's some precedent in European soccer when it comes to that. I saw Mike Ryan from over at the Le Batard show mention that as well. And I'd imagine everything is going to be on the table at this point, because when you've got guys like Kirby Smart using their time after a win like that, devoted towards this, saying we've got to change something, people tend to listen. And we've seen a bunch of other change in college football in recent years. So the more the merrier at this point here. Anish, you're the best. Everyone, make sure you check out what bowl games Anish is calling every year, because clearly it is predictive towards mascot-related chaos and something being devoured in front of us. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Mike, I can't believe he didn't have his Pop-Tart. Another one that didn't ever had a Pop-Tart.
He's right, though. This is like the 1-cent stamp story from me back in college, where you guys didn't teach me how to mail a letter properly, so I looked like an idiot. This one's on me. I was Anish's teammate. I got to put my hand up and say I let him down. time to finish off the show the way that we always do, even in the new year. This, that, and the third, 3 quick stories to send you off on into the rest of the year. I found out it's a leap year the other day, too, so enjoy that one when we get to February. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live here Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKingsNetwork.com, the DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, all sorts of great places. Tell your friends about it and bring them over. But if you miss any of it, you can catch us and our great guests like Anish Shroff, ESPN and Carolina Panthers play-by-play announcer, anywhere you get your podcast, as well as right here on YouTube after the show's done, Dad.
Hey, Mike, real quick, I want to ask you, when you and Anish did the mayonnaise thing, did you guys get from the network at all? Like, hey, okay, maybe don't do all that, or did you hear anything from them?
No, we didn't get any pushback, mostly because we didn't tell them most of what we were going to do, to be honest. Like our normal producer was out sick in that game. We had a producer that was in there, Paul Irvin, who did a great job in that game that kind of let us do our thing. And so we just sort of kept that close to the vest and then just decided to let it ride.
I bring that up because years ago at ESPN, I was doing the Outback Bowl, again, years ago. And, what do they have as the appetizer? The bloomin' onion. And, of course, they brought a bloomin' onion up to the booth, and I kept eating said bloomin' onion. And they kept coming to do a booth shot of me eating bloomin' onion, to the point where at halftime, one of the muckety-mucks at ESPN called me at halftime and said, okay, let's stop eating the bloomin' onion. I'm like, they're a sponsor. We're having a little bit of fun. They're a sponsor. Let's stop eating the bloomin' onion. No more eating the bloomin' onion. I'm like, oh my God, what a bunch of I was just like, are you kidding me?
You start eating a bloomin' onion, who the hell can stop eating a bloomin' onion?
That's exactly right.
So damn good.
With that dipping sauce?
Yes.
Oh,
seriously.
Yes.
Put that on the poll.
Wow.
If someone puts a bloomin' onion down in front of you, is it physically possible to stop eating it? Because I do not think so.
And oh, by the way, I didn't really listen. I just kept eating said bloomin' onion, which certainly shouldn't shock anybody because it's food.
Said bad service in here, dude. Sorry.
Yeah, Dad, as always, ahead of your time on that, and an innovator. Our genetic makeup has never been more apparent to people than it is right now, as we have both gone in and bastardized bowl season with on-air consumption. But speaking of doing fun things on ESPN, guys, let's get to this. This might have been the funniest moment on College Game Day in the last decade. Take a listen to Pat McAfee, Reese Davis, and the rest of the crew as Reese tries to navigate a very interesting acronym that Alabama's quarterback made use of.
Jalen Milroe often wears his own branded apparel reading LANK across the front. It's an acronym that stands for Let a Naysayer Know. Being told by his former offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien.
That is not what I thought.
Is that not what you thought?
Boy, let a naysayer know.
Let a naysayer know.
Of course.
The professional's right in the middle of his lead. That's all right. I just keep going.
You almost lost me again. It got real tight up here as you were. I just want to let you know.
Wow.
In that one moment, Pat McAfee worth every dollar that you paid. For that moment alone, Pat McAfee worth every dollar that you paid to him. That was Charles Barkley levels of on-air hilarious there. Reese Davis, the ultimate professional, and Pat McAfee, a conduit for the people on that who were all sitting there really worried when Reese Davis started that word.
Were throats getting a little tight on that one? Woo. Oh my God. Yeah, that was, and then everybody normally would have just let it go and just breathed a sigh of relief. Not Pat. Pat wasn't letting that one go. Woo! Glad I thought didn't think you were going to say that.
But because of that, we got like the world class like Chuckle Fest from Joey Galloway and like others. That's what made it so funny.
It was everybody trusted each other enough to do that, because you normally don't break in when Reese is doing the down camera monologue lead up to the story there, and Reese able to navigate that in a way that few can, because he is the consummate professional. Everyone played their parts. The memes were incredibly giving right now. We all understood the assignment. That was incredible there, and exactly what Pat was brought there to do. Like, did the job there and did it flawlessly. So bravo to everybody involved here. That was incredible. Emerson, let's get to that. We had a little bit of NHL Winter Classic action, which means we get to do some fit checks.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of understanding the assignment here, the Winter Classic, it's produced some sensational pregame attire in previous years. And yesterday in Seattle, the Kraken and Golden Knights hopped on that trend in a big way. Vegas showing up in Elvis costumes, certainly did not disappoint. What you're seeing right now are the members of the Kraken who showed up in fisherman uniforms and were carrying fish as they arrived. It's hard to do it better than what these two teams just did in the latest installment of the Winter Classic, GoJo.
This is like what we just talked about with Anish in the bowl games. It's okay to have fun around sports sometimes.
Absolutely.
This is the perfect example of everybody feeling the moment the right way and going and doing it. I err on the side of the fisherman costumes, Dad, but the Vegas Elvis, obviously a tried and true staple.
Oh, listen, they both hit the nail on the head for their respective cities, right? I mean, without question. I went to one of these when the Blackhawks, I forgot who they played. Me and your mother went when it was at Notre Dame Stadium. I love the Winter Classic. I think it is fantastic to watch. But then to play into it, and then again, when these guys are on the ice, field, whatever you're going to be on, you take it serious and you play, but God forbid you have a little bit of fun and you play into it a little bit. I loved this. I thought it was fantastic. Standing O for both teams for playing into this and then playing a game after it, but that was fantastic.
This much, we're watching the video of the walkout right now where you've got fishermen throwing fishes over the Kraken players. Walking out that much fire near an ice rink seems like a kind of a bad idea. The level of pyrotechnics there near something that can melt, but you know what? Once we let Vegas in the door in sports, everyone decided to lean more into the showmanship aspect of it. So chestnut checkers from every league involved as we've let residences now infiltrate sports. Let's, guys, finish this up with the third. We've got Emerson on the show today, our nation's foremost Jacksonville Jaguars fan and representative here. And Emerson, your team was at the center of interesting moment this weekend involving an owner in sports, so I want to let you get some things off your chest here.
The good people of Jacksonville being abused by Panthers owner David Tepper. We had a classic old-fashioned Tepper tantrum with this video that was making its rounds on social media. Dude completely disrespected the fans, throwing a drink on them, and we haven't heard anything from the team up to this point. I mean, my guess is the owner saying, no, don't put anything out about it. But the guy's been a controversial figure among critics for, his unstable franchise and just running in and out of head coaches, but not a great look here, gentlemen. Not a great look at all. And I'm telling you right now, being from Jacksonville, the people do not deserve that treatment, okay? Don't take your frustration out on the fans below you as you sit up high on your mighty suite there at midfield. Go ahead.
Pretty high, but not that far away from the fans. Like you saw in that video, you could basically climb up into those boxes, and you saw everyone else in that box. When David Tepper, who clearly is a little bit in over his head, I think at this point, as an owner of an NFL franchise, voicing or showing some of his frustration, Dad, you saw everybody else in that box immediately go, oh God, and just get on the phone and start realizing how much damage control they were going to have to do in that moment.
Listen, the guy has a quick temper as far as a quick trigger finger on firing coaches. And again, not just in football and other things, sports teams he owns as well. So haven't heard much about this since. Has Carolina even put out a statement yet?
No, dude, nothing
about this?
So
we haven't heard anything.
Have not seen it. The biggest thing here, and I think you will not be shocked, Mike, when I go down this road. Now, you're in a suite, the drinks are free, but you can't waste a drink.
No.
You just can't do it. Can't do it. Now, again, you can just go back and you can afford all the drinks you want. And in the suite, the drinks, you're getting them. They're right there. It's pretty much free flowing. That still doesn't okay you wasting a drink. And just horrible sportsmanship by doing what he did, but don't waste the drink.
No.
Horrible humanship. That's bad human behavior.
Yes, that's what it's like right after spitting on somebody, this is the most disrespectful, non-physical thing you could really do to another human.
Absolutely. Although probably not even the most offensive thing someone's seen in that box, as I can confirm, being at the Gator Bowl last year down there when Notre Dame played South Carolina, I might have been twerking on one of those desks in the owner's box watching that game. So the fans below got a show that they weren't expecting to pay for.
Yeah. Panthers fans hoping he's forced to sell the team now. For sure.
Very quickly, there's recent precedent for that. So Carolina's used to that. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.